Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Torah with your host, Rabbi Anibal. So happy to be here again with all of you. And welcome, David, Shelly, Brenda, Lori. Those are the names that I've seen so far here in the chat. So if you are there, please say hello. I always like to know who is on the other side. I guess it's chilly and rainy in Texas. And I said here in Winnipeg, it's just chilly for now. 4 degrees Celsius, supposed to feel like -1. It is kind of chilly. But as Shelley said, we have better weather coming up. So I may even be able to use my electric scooter very soon. Let's see. I guess in Winnipeg, the problem with the scooter is not so much the weather, but the potholes. Welcome, Julia. Welcome to the class. Lots of potholes after this rough winter. And then it takes the whole summer to patch the roads just in time for another winter to come and destroy it again. So that's the cycle here in Winnipeg. That's the cycle. We don't have winter and summer. We have winter and construction season. That's what it looks like. That's what it feels like driving around here in Winnipeg. But it is what it is. We should be thankful for many of the good things that we have in this side of the hemisphere. So never to complain too much. Never to complain too much. So we're going to study today about this week's parsha, which is Emor el Kohanim, more instructions for the priests, which is interesting. But other than that, this parsha also mentioned the counting of the Omer. It's not that we're going to study about it because we already studied in the past about the counting of the Omer, but the mitzvah itself is coming from this week's parsha, this week Torah portion. Yeah. Rabbi, can you instruct us on Pesach Sheini, please? Well, it's nothing that we do in this generation. Pesach Sheini was something that happened back in the day. When they were in the desert, it was time to offer the Paschal lamb again the year after the Exodus from Egypt. And what happened is there are, and as the Torah mentioned, many rules for people to enter to the tabernacle, to the sanctuary. One of the things is that they couldn't be impure. That's why, remember, we studied how important it was to have handy the ashes of the red heifer, who can purify people who were impure for situations like this. But what happened is, if you were impure and Passover was coming, then you cannot come to the temple to offer or to partake or to participate into the Pesach sacrifices. You had to stay outside, and it was very hard for people having to miss that. So welcome, Maria Lee. Welcome to the class. So people complain. They say it's not fair. Everybody's going to the tabernacle to celebrate Passover, and tough luck for different reasons. We are impure. We cannot do it. Please do something. So what the solution at the time was to give those people a second chance a month after, so they will have 30 days to purify themselves from whatever impurity they had before. 30 days is more than enough time to overcome that and to be sure that they were not going to be contaminated, quote unquote, right? They won't allow themselves to be impure again for the second chance. Now, this is where sometimes I hear a little bit of misunderstanding of what Pesach Sheini is. On Pesach Sheini, the second Pesach, it's not that you have to go and eat matzah and to have another Seder a month after. Nothing to do with that. It's only the chance for people who were impure during the original Pesach to come and bring a sacrifice. So we don't have a temple anymore. So there is no need to come, not even the first Pesach, to offer a sacrifice. So Pesach Sheini, it's still a date in the calendar, but there is nothing special for us to do. Okay? So, but yes, Julia, there is such a thing as Pesach Sheni, a second Pesach for those who missed the first one. Okay, but there are no observances in this day and age because we don't have the temple, we don't offer the sacrifices anymore. I hope that answers the question. If there is any other questions attached to that, please, guys, let me know in the chat. I'll do my best to follow up any other any other questions that you may have after what I just said. Okay, but yes, it was a beautiful thing that Pesach Sheni also came from the people who missed it. They approached Moses and asked for another chance, which is let me rephrase that. Let me help us comprehend how beautiful the teaching behind that is. Because this principle could be applied to many things in our lives. How many times we miss a deadline? Could be for many different things. Could be at work, could be a bill, could be an exam at elementary school, high school, or university. Many times we miss the boat from different reasons. Maybe we were away, maybe we were sick, maybe we forgot. Who knows? But it happens all the time that we miss a deadline, we miss the boat, right? So what are you going to do after that? Well, option number one is nothing. But you're aware that you missed it and you deal with the consequences. Okay? I guess it's fine. But there is another way. What if you approach the person that was affected by you missing the deadline and request another deadline? I said, look, I will be honest with you. I wasn't able to fulfill it on time. May I have another chance? Nothing to lose with that kind of approach. So the truth is, in this case, it worked. They were aware that they missed the chance. They said, hey, Hatati, I missed the chance. I was my mistake. Can I have it again? And God said, yes, you can. Wait a month. Bring a sacrifice for what you missed the first time. Beautiful. Beautiful, if you ask me. Yeah. Julia, you said, I heard that one could have a Pesach Seder after purification. No, it wasn't a Seder. It wasn't a Seder. It was just a sacrifice. They didn't do the Seder back then, by the way. Until they entered to the land of Israel and they had a more formal dinner and thing, they didn't have a Seder. In those days, Pesach was just the celebration of offering the Paschal lamb. Okay? And then after that, they had another, we also talked about this, they had another festival that overlapped with Pesach, that is Chag HaMatzot, the festival of the matzah, of the unleavened bread. And that means that other than the sacrifice on the first day, that it was the Passover, the Pesach, then they still have to eat matzah for another week, or avoid chametz, not to eat any leavened for another week. And that had nothing to do with impurification. So even people who were impure for the first Pesach, they still had to eat chametz, eat matzah for a week. Okay, that is separate from the offering. How about now, says Julia? No, there is nothing formal in these days. Okay. Nothing formal. So Shelley, if somebody missed the Seder for any reason, I guess you could do it, but it's not formal. There is no law about doing that. There is no law about doing that a month after. Okay? Yeah. If you want to do it, you could do it, but you have to be careful of what blessings you say, because you can say that, when we say the Kiddush and things, we say, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzotav etzivanu. We are acknowledging that God commanded us to do it, but there is no commandment to have a Seder a month after if you miss the first one. Okay? Sorry for those of you who missed the first one, but this special Sheni applied only in temple times. Yeah. Lori said, I've been told, but I don't believe that being nida prohibits eating at the side. No, that's not true. That's not true. Yeah. Okay. Now that I think we have people in our virtual classroom, let's begin with our formal class. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this week's Parsha, about the specific content of what we are going to read in the Torah. Okay? So what I wanted to start is with this text from the book of Leviticus. Let me read it and then I will explain a little bit and you will see where I'm going here. It says, God said to Moses, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, none shall defile himself for any dead person among his people, except for the relatives that they are closest to him, his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and his brother. Also, for a virgin sister, that means unmarried, basically, in the Torah language. For the unmarried sister close to him because she has not become someone's wife. So for her, he might defile himself. Let's start to understand the language a little bit. Okay, defile is itame or itma, which means to become impure. Okay, so basically what it says, Leviticus, it said, okay, Moses, tell the priests, okay, the descendants of Aaron, that they have to be very careful not to get impure with a dead body. Why? Because they are needed in the tabernacle. Everybody else, if they get impure, okay, you cannot go to the temple for that day or for that couple of days or whatever it takes until you can get purified, right? That's fine. But the priest cannot afford that. That's part of their job. And this happens in many different aspects of our lives. I don't know if you noticed, for example, but I did. I took my son the other day for a blood test and one of these labs that we have in the city. And you will see that everybody in the lab, the workers there, they were wearing masks. So for the people going there, you know, you may or may not, if you want, if you are not. But why would the people there be wearing masks and everything? Because they cannot afford getting sick from everybody coming there for the tests, right? Because many people go there to get a test done because they may be infected with one thing or with another. So, yeah, for people, let's say you go there, you get sick, then you miss school or whatever. But people working there that they had exposed all the time, they cannot afford to get sick. So they get simple double protection. So it in the Torah, it's the same. The priest needed to be working at the temple. Nobody else could do it on their behalf. They were not allowed. People that they were not Kohanim, they cannot be in charge of preparing sacrifices and everything. So they have to be extra careful not to get impure. Okay? That's why even to this day, many of you may be familiar with this rule that the descendants of Kohanim, descendants of priests, they don't come to funerals. Have you ever heard that? I know in Winnipeg it's a big deal. For example, let me tell you the experience here at the Shaare Zedek. Here we have a special room for the Kohanim where they can watch the funeral from a TV, so they don't have to come into the sanctuary, because to do that you have to walk by the corpse, the coffin that is sitting in the lobby. So that's why we have this special room. And why do we have to go to that length, to that extent, to create a special room where the Kohanim can come and watch it from a TV from this week's Parsha? That it says here that the Kohen cannot get impure. So the Kohen can't even go to the cemetery to visit relatives. The only exception for them to get impure, to get close to the body, is for their immediate family. Otherwise, it will be too cruel from God to say to the Kohanim, you can't even get close to the body of your relative when they die, right? So you cannot attend their funerals. It will be terrible, emotionally terrible. So yes, the Torah said for the death of the close relative they can come, and it will, for those special occasions, there will be another Kohen taking care of your altar. Okay, let me read a little bit here, a little bit of the text. Not a wife, says Lori, not according to the Torah. Not according to the Torah. I'm not sure if the rabbi extended that after, but not according to the Torah, because wives back then, it was like an interesting thing because they could have multiple wives. So it's very interesting, very interesting. Yeah. Let's see. Lori said, what about seeing the mummy display at the museum? Houston has a king that... yeah, well, if you're a Kohen, you can't do any of that. You can't do any of that. Welcome, Randy. Welcome to the class. Julia, you said, I have a wonder about the rabbis working on Shabbat. And how did that come to be part of the discussion? Rabbis working on Shabbat. I will say only one thing about that, and then I will move on. The Torah never says that people cannot work on Shabbat. The Torah says that people cannot do melacha, which is just a specific kind of work. Okay? So that is what people are not allowed to do. So the rabbis are, when we say we are working, yeah, but we are not doing melacha, so it's a different category. Okay? Welcome, Holly. Welcome to the class. You made it at 12:22. Very good. Still a good time. We barely scratched the surface here, so glad that you made it. Okay, so from here, it is interesting that this text from this week's Parsha is still applicable to this date, to the point that many Kohanim, many people who they know that they are descendants of priests, they take precautions not to get close to a corpse, right? And as I mentioned before, I bet you probably know people who follow that rule. And if you do, please let me know in the chat, especially people who are not in Winnipeg, because I already know in Winnipeg how it works. I would like to see if you're familiar how your local communities deal with this situation. I know, for example, that in the Reform world, they don't do this. They don't even count who is a Kohen and who is not, right? But it's here in Winnipeg, it seems to be a big deal. Let's continue. Now, the rabbis, of course, expanded a little bit this concept of none shall defile himself or impurify himself or any dead person among his people. Okay, listen what Rashi said, because this is extremely important. Rashi says, "This means as long as there are some Jews who can occupy themselves with his burial." So basically, what it says is the Torah is presenting the best case scenario. Okay, best case scenario, the priest don't have to get impure with a dead body. But Rashi asks, okay, what if there is nobody else around? Okay, so if there is somebody else, okay, Kohanim, priest, stay home, don't get close. But if there is nobody else, what are you going to do? Let the body rot? Because, no, sorry, I'm a Kohen, I cannot touch it. So that's why Rashi feels that it's important to make this point clear. So he continues. This excludes the case of a met mitzvah, a corpse of a person whose relatives are unknown, or which lies in a place where there are no other Jews, nor are there any in the near vicinity, in which case the priest is allowed to make himself unclean or impure by handling the corpse. See there how, in the times of Rashi, it was very important that a Jew is the one taking care of the Jewish body. And that is because of all the knowledge you need to basically that all the knowledge you need to prepare a body in a Jewish way. And by the way, this is also very interesting because a couple of weeks ago, I took my Choosing Judaism class, also known as conversion class, to the Chesed Shelemes here in Winnipeg. If you haven't done that, you know that you can book private tours to our Chesed Shelemes. So that is the Jewish funeral home here in Winnipeg. There are similar funeral homes, Jewish funeral homes, similar to our Chesed Shelemes, everywhere in the world. Okay? If you have a Jewish community in your area, you have a Jewish funeral home. Okay? So this is very interesting. Welcome, Judy. Welcome to the class. So we went there, and Rina Borditsky, the director of the Chesed Shelemes, she took us to all the process. I mean, it was like she was teaching, but at the same time, she was walking us through the different places within the Chesed Shelemes. And you will understand very quickly why Rashi says that it has to be a Jew, the one doing this. Now, what happens if they are not Jews in the area to prepare the body? So in that case, it's the same. You know, if there is nobody else, the Kohen does it. But there is nobody else and no Kohen, so a non-Jew, of course, can take care of the body. So there is different categories. But if there are Jewish people who are able to help with the burial process, they should be the first one to step up. That's why you're going to see in our humble Chesed Shelemes, in our humble funeral home here in Winnipeg, that there are lots of volunteers that they put countless hours to help with the preparation of the bodies as volunteers. They wash the bodies, they wrap the bodies on the shrouds, and some of the people actually, there are people who actually manufactures the shrouds at home, and they bring it. It's very humbling to see what is going on there. So that's what he said. If you live in Winnipeg and you've never been there, call the Chesed Shelemes and book a tour. Rina will be happy to show you what it is, and maybe she will even convince you to be a volunteer, right? And as Shelley says here, she said, I highly recommend removes the mystery. Because let's be honest, most people don't know what's going on. They just imagine what God knows what they're doing with the bodies, right? Yes, Ariel, and you said it's a beautiful, sacred thing, very humbling, and if you can be a volunteer, it's a great mitzvah. A volunteer could be, making the shrouds, could be helping washing the bodies, or being shomrim. Sometimes the body has to be escorted at all times. So some people offer themselves as volunteers to be with the body, just reading chapters of the book of Psalms all the time until another shift will come and release you from that. Some of the people will come to be pallbearers because there are families that they don't have enough people. So they rely on volunteers to come and help. Okay? Yeah, Ariel, I would say a shomer, to stay there with the bodies. There are many, many ways that we can get involved into this sacred mitzvah of honoring the dead. Okay? So, according to Rashi here, this is so important that if there is nobody else, even the priest have to step up and do it, even if that means that the priest will have to miss the service at the temple the next day. Beautiful. Let's continue. You see, the Yosef Caro will expand on that, and it says it very clearly. As long as there is a dead body in the town, all of the townspeople are forbidden to do work, because one who sees a dead body but does not escort it to burial and ensure that all of its needs are met is placed under a ban. This text deals with the mitzvah of escorting the dead to the burial. So basically, the whole community is responsible to be sure that every Jew who dies will have a proper burial. And again, this is something we should all be proud about the Chesed Shelemis in Winnipeg and the way this happens. I can't even tell you how many times in all my years here in Winnipeg, we have cases of somebody who died and they were with no family. Sometimes there will be a social worker from the city of Winnipeg that will contact the Chesed Shelemis, and they will say, look, we have this person was working with our social workers. He was in this terrible situation. There is no family, but he always said that he was Jewish, and so Chesed Shelemis will intervene. I said, yes, this person was Jewish, and they will take care of everything. We will get volunteers for every step, and there is no money. Sometimes there is no money for the funerals, so different synagogues will take turns to cover the funeral expenses in those cases. Okay? Why do we do that? It's all coming from this. As long as there is a dead body in the town, all of the townspeople are forbidden to do work. It means that how can you continue with your life knowing that there is somebody who won't have a funeral unless we all step up and help. So this is a big deal in Judaism. Okay? Judy, you say, oh, second year of Neil passing, may his memory be a blessing. Amen. Yeah. So yes, today we are going to review a little bit of all the rules that we observe around the passing of a Jew, because there are many things that we learn. And everything, I wanted to use this week's parsha that is specifically talking about that even the Kohen has to go to the extent of impurify themselves if there is nobody else to take care of the dead body. So I wanted to continue to expand that topic so we can all review all the rules around the burial and the mourning. Okay? So let's continue. Now, you probably all remember, or maybe you have seen that famous black ribbon that is worn in this day and age. Now, depends on your community. You may don't use a black ribbon. So let me give you an example. In Argentina, or even in Chile, those were my previous two congregations, we don't use black ribbons. We don't. We follow the most traditional way, which is to cut directly the clothing that we wear for the funerals. Okay? I did it for my father when he passed away in Argentina, and I helped families do it countless of times in Chile. Once I moved to Winnipeg, I was a little bit surprised of seeing this black ribbon that people wear, at least here in Winnipeg, right? And at the beginning, it was a little shock that why will you water down the tradition? But then I understood that at the end of the day, the cutting, the ripping the clothing is a symbol, right? And as a symbol, it could be simplified as far as we understand what it means. So at the end of the day, looking at somebody whose clothes being cut, right, or looking at the ribbon, if we understand why that happens, it doesn't really matter what we do. So, Brenda, you said the Orthodox rabbis in Dallas don't use the black ribbon. They tear the cloth. Yes, here too in Winnipeg, the Orthodox rabbis, they tear the cloth. Okay, I only see it here in conservative and reform synagogues, but surprisingly, in South America, even conservative synagogues and reform, they still tear the cloth. Okay, I guess there is this concept in North America that we are more civilized for everything. But it is what it is. It's the tradition of the place, and we respect it. We follow the tradition of wherever we go. So, let's continue. Whoever has lost a relative for whom he is required to observe the laws of mourning must rend his clothing. Now, again, Now, for the general population, not for the Kohanim, for the priest, the spouse is included. Okay, so the kriya, the rending, is to be observed by the 7 immediate relatives: son, daughter, father, mother, brother, sister, and spouse. Okay, so 7 relatives that everybody is obligated to wear the black ribbon. Okay, so the kriya, that is the act of tearing the clothing or the ribbon, that act is called the kriya, takes place at the funeral. This is also an innovation. Back in the day, because people were more aware and they were more knowledgeable, they will do the kriya on themselves whenever they witness the passing of the relative. Okay, if you weren't there when the relative died, then yes, you do it at the cemetery. But otherwise, if you are in the room, in the hospital, whatever, and the person passed away in front of you, they used to do it back in the moment based on some examples on the Bible. Some people used to do it upon hearing the news. Okay, we learned this from Jacob, actually. I don't know if you remember. We have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob was told, but by his children, that Joseph was killed by an animal. And upon hearing the news, he tears his tunic. He did the first kriya mentioned in Scripture. So we learn from that should be our reaction to the passing of a loved one. Okay? But in this day and age, just trust me, is done Orthodox, conservative, and Reform. This is done at the cemetery right before the funeral, and usually the rabbi will help you to do that. It will come either with scissors, or sometimes the ribbon is pre-cut, so you have to do is to stretch it to the 2 sides, and it will happen. Okay. Now, if you want to do the most traditional way and to tear your clothing, so then we are going here on screen, point number 3. The clothing to be torn is customarily other clothing excluding coats. So let's say that you're wearing like an undershirt, like a t-shirt underneath, then a shirt, then a suit jacket, and then a coat. Then it's only the shirt and the jacket. Undergarment doesn't count, and coats don't count, because traditionally coats are things that you remove as soon as you enter to a room. So and then undergarment don't, because it's not visible. Only clothes that they are visible and they are traditionally worn inside places are the one that they have to be torn. I hope that's clear. Okay. Now, for a parent, the rent should be visible on the left side, close to the heart. Only for mother and father, close to the heart. For all others, it should be on the right side, and it doesn't have to be visible. Okay? That is the law. That is the law. So left side for mother and father, right side for the other 5 relatives. Now, it also changes the length of the mourning period, where only for mother and father, the one that is on the left, you observe mourning for a year. For all the other relatives, only for 30 days. Okay? Shelley, you said, would one wear the piece of torn clothing throughout the Shiva period? Yes. And I was told that's one of the reasons why North Americans wear a ribbon. Because people in this day and age, they change the clothes every day. If you are, let's say, tearing your shirt, then you have to wear the same shirt for 7 days. which is not so common, right, anymore. So in this case, it would allow you to technically change the clothes you wear every day of the Shiva. You just take the black ribbon from one piece of cloth and you will put it on the next. That's the reason. Okay? But good question. Very good question. Now, another thing that is very interesting here, and how the rabbis expanded what we need to observe around a dead body just to fulfill the prohibition of not disrespecting the dead. Or if you want to put it in the positive, honoring the deceased. It's like this. The Shulchan Aruch says, whoever has lost a relative for whom he is required to observe the laws of mourning, again, the 7 relatives that we just talked about, if it is before the burial, then he must eat in a different house than where the body is located, and he is not permitted to eat meat or to drink wine, nor does he recite the blessings over bread or the grace after meals. He is also exempt from all the mitzvot aseh, positive commandments of the Torah. So, when somebody dies, his relatives becomes onenim. Okay? Onenim, the onen, is somebody who is in a limbo, in a religious limbo. So the person doesn't have any religious obligations. Oh, it has some. For example, you can't go and eat not kosher food. Stuff like that. That's why it says only the positive commandment. All the commandments that start with you shall not, then those we have to fulfill. Okay? But it's mostly, this relates to religious obligation, like you don't have to go to synagogue to daven the 3 times a day, and so forth before the funeral. Because after the funeral, you're already obligated to recite Kaddish and all that. But before the funeral, you are not a mourner yet, technically. You are in a limbo. It's called an onen. Just remember that. So, number 1 that we don't do because we consider that is disrespectful to the dead body is to eat in front of the body. That is disrespectful. The body cannot eat anymore, so we don't do it. Same thing is, also we don't pray and think, especially not in front of the body, because the body cannot do it anymore. That's why, for example, I don't know if you ever learned this, when you go to a cemetery, you don't wear a talit. You don't put on tefillin inside a cemetery. It's considered disrespectful. Because the book of Psalms says, Lo hameitim yalleluya. He said the dead cannot praise God. So going to the cemetery and putting on talit and tefillin is disrespectful to a body who cannot do it anymore. So there are many things that we are very careful not to do in front of a body. So in this case, for example, we don't feast. We don't feast. We don't eat meat and wine in front of the body because it's considered disrespectful. Now, let's try to understand what is this big deal of all the respect due to a dead body. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, where we read, So God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Now, as I put it here, we are not simply a body, but a receptacle for the divine presence. This divine presence is the source of our consciousness, creativity, and morality, and what enables us to attain holiness. Thus, even after the departure of the divine presence from the body, it retains its sanctity and must be treated with respect. Okay? We respect this body that, even though it's dead now, used to contain the image of God inside. The soul, that is a piece of the divine, was inside that body. And as such, we treat it with respect. The same thing, when we have a Torah that we cannot read from it anymore because it's not kosher, but we treat it with respect for what the Torah once was. And so forth, we learn a lot of things. And it's very important for us to be respectful and to realize that a body is still holy. And I say this because in many cultures, when the person died, it's died. It doesn't really matter what you do after. We don't treat the body that way. We do care what happened with that corpse. Any questions? Please let me know in the chat. Now, let me read this, that one can comment. The principle governing the care of the body immediately following death is the sacredness of man. A human being is equated to a Torah scroll that was impaired. It's not kosher anymore, and can no longer be used at religious services. While the ancient scroll no longer serves any useful ritual purpose, it is revered for the exalted function it once filled. Man was created in the image of God, and although the pulse of life is no more, the human form must be respected for having once embodied the Spirit of God, and for the character and the personality it housed. The manner of respect is governed and detailed by religious tradition rather than by personal sentiment and whim alone. Okay? And the perfect example to this is that, in Shaare Zedek, many of you know this, we have a Torah in the Ark that it was rescued from the Holocaust. And it's not kosher anymore. So we can't really formally read from it. But we still keep it in the Aron Kodesh, in the Holy Ark, and we treat it with respect. And we take it out whenever we pray for the victims of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. And we still get moved by that Torah, even though it's not kosher anymore. So if we can do that for Torah, even more so for the body that once housed the presence of God. Brenda, you said it's so difficult to understand how Jewish people consider cremation with all the laws in the Torah. Yeah, well, I would say that most people who consider creation, they probably disagree with everything that I just said. Fortunately or unfortunately sometimes, we respect people's opinions. And some people choose not to follow what we call halachic Judaism, a form of Judaism based on halakha or Jewish law. Right? Lori, you said, I never thought of myself as the Holy of Holies where Hashem resides, just dirt. No, we are receptacles of the divine presence. And that's why for us, life is so precious. It's one of the pillars of Judaism. That's why Judaism is such a religion who puts so much emphasis on life. That's why life is such an important thing in Judaism. Because we recognize that every person is precious because it contains the image of God. Yeah. So we are never just dirt. Although sometimes rabbis say that sometimes we need to be reminded. This is the catch, the other side of the coin. Sometimes we need to be reminded, right, that one day we are going to become dirt after we die and we get buried. So we don't become arrogant. Because technically, we do have a good reason to become arrogant. Hey, we are housing part of God, and that is all good. But hopefully we don't need to be reminded at one point, yes, but at the same time, we are finite. And God is not. God is infinite. That's the thing. Lori, you said, Adam was made from dirt of the earth. I cannot be more than him. No. Adam was made from the dirt, but until God blowed, blew, past tense, God's Spirit into Adam's nostril. And then Adam stopped being dirt and became a person, a human being, became the housing of the Spirit of God. So yeah, dirt is the raw material of Adam, but not the final product. That's that is a huge difference. Huge difference. Now, let's continue with the next thing that we also learned from the Torah. And it's a big deal when you come to a funeral. It is an important mitzvah to eulogize the deceased properly. In Hebrew it's called hesped. Lispod, we say. To eulogize is lispod. It's a word that appears in the Torah. I will show you that in the next slide. Julia, you said the laws of burial also apply to non-Jewish relatives. Well, let's say that you converted to Judaism. Now all your relatives are not Jews. Yes, you still observe all these laws for them. Okay? Yeah. It is an important mitzvah to eulogize the deceased properly. The mitzvah requires one to raise his voice to say heart-rending words that promote weeping, as well as to recall the praiseworthy attributes of the deceased. It is forbidden to exaggerate his praiseworthiness too much. Instead, we mention his good qualities and add to them, but just a little. But we should not exaggerate. If the deceased possesses no good qualities whatsoever, then don't say anything. Nothing should be said. But what I wanted to say is the mitzvah of eulogizing, coming from the Torah, is coming from our father Abraham and our mother Sarah. When Sarah died, and this is mentioned in the Torah in the book of Genesis, when Sarah died, it says, Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, now we call it Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham proceeded to eulogize Sarah and to weep. And you see that in the word weep, the two E's are smaller. I did it like that. It's not, you won't find this in any Bible. But if you look at the Hebrew, one of the letters in the word livkota, to weep or to cry, one of the letters, it is smaller in the Torah. It is smaller. So the rabbis try to explain why that letter is smaller. And what they say is that when the eulogy is properly delivered, our sadness, our weeping, our crying will diminish. Just like the little letter in the middle. It's not that we are not sad, it's not that we don't cry, but the eulogy have the power to begin the healing process for us. So even though we cry, we hopefully cry a little bit less after listening to such beautiful words or inspiring words. And that's the idea of the eulogy. Okay? Now, the other thing that we learn from the Torah is that we have to bury underground. Okay? That the dead body has to return to the ground. As Lori, as you said, because we come from the ground, so eventually we go back to it, or to dirt. I like to call it ground. Sounds better than dirt. Dirt's something that, I don't know, I have on top of my monitor, and it has to be cleaned up. But ground, right, is different than dirt. Now, one who places the deceased in a coffin, but does not bury him in the earth, transgresses the prohibition of delaying burial. That's another thing. We cannot delay the burial. We have to try. Keyword try. We have to try to do it as soon as possible. Okay? And even back in the days of Joseph Caro, when the Shulchan Aruch was written, local civil laws require the use of a coffin. Jewish law, we don't have to use a coffin. But we live in a society that coffin is used. So what do? Well, the rabbi said, no. That's okay. You can still place the body in a coffin. It's kosher. is kosher. What is not kosher is to place it in the body and not to bury it. Okay, that's why in Judaism we don't have the showing of the body after death, where people come and see the dead body inside the coffin, right? We don't have that. We have, once the body is in the coffin, then we have to bury it right away. And if for any reason we cannot bury it, the fact that the coffin is closed and in some communities even covered with black cloth or something like that, it means that it's already buried. It doesn't belong to us anymore. Okay? Yeah, sorry, Brenda. Once in a while we have to do this. Not everything is uplifting, but it's important for all of us to learn this, because unfortunately we all go through this. And the more we are prepared, I will say, is the better. Because sometimes when we reach these times, we don't have head to go and start studying. So this is something that we all have to do it beforehand. And that's why I like when people book in advance these tours to the Chesed Shelemes, so that you don't have to start imagining this, God forbid, what they're going to do to my loved one there. And there is nothing ominous out of it. It's something that is done with love and respect. But it's important to study in advance. Okay? Now, I said, if one places the deceased in a coffin and buries him on earth, he does not transgress the prohibition. In any case, it is better to bury him directly in the earth, even outside the land of Israel, which, by the way, I don't know if you know that in Israel they don't use coffins. There is no such a need for the law because they try to follow the halakha, the Jewish law, as much as possible, right? Yeah. Okay, let's leave it here because then the next slide is already another topic, and I don't think we should start something new today. Okay, so if you have any other questions about this topic, please let me know in the chat. Okay, so the only thing that I want to say to wrap it up is that after the funeral or after burial is when we recite Kaddish for the first time. Okay, that's why traditionally we don't. Glenn Berlow, welcome. So there is a moment between when they put the coffin on the straps above the hole. Is that place when it drops, you really feel it's over. Yeah, it's the most difficult time is when people have to put earth on top of the coffin, but after that is when we recite the first Kaddish. Okay, so technically, even though some communities they do it, there is no Kaddish at the synagogue before. When they do the service, there is no Kaddish there. The first Kaddish is done after the burial. That's when the relatives become mourners. They're not in limbo anymore. Now they become avelim, mourners. Now that the first thing that happened after the burial is what is called the meal of consolation. And again, this day and age, I see how the family is the one contacting the chef in the synagogue and arranging for the food. The traditional way is the family should not take care of that. It should be the friends of the family arranging for the meal of consolation. I don't know too many communities where that still exists, except for very traditional ones, that the other friends and other relatives are the ones taking care of that. But that kicks off the Shiva that lasts for 7 days, and then we have 1 month, it's called the Shloishim. After that month, as you saw, for most of the relatives, there is no more mourning anymore. Only for mother and father, it will continue for a full year, but Kaddish is only for 11 months. Okay? So that's the thing. That's the thing. So, any other questions? Oh, Glenn, El Malach Rahamim is a prayer that is recited. Yes. Yes. We also recite it every time we visit at the cemetery. So, other thing that people don't know, that here at the Shari Zedek, when people visit to the cemetery, they can come here and request a free booklet that we put together, that it will have all prayers and meditations that you can read when you go visit your relative at the cemetery. Okay? So, yeah. So, yeah, sorry about the topic, but it's once a year maybe that I cover this and I review this with everyone. So I promise you next time it's going to be a more uplifting one. But I hope you learned something new or you refreshed all your information about this topic. That is a very, very important topic. And I usually try not to talk about this on Shabbat sermons or anything. So this is the perfect setting, unfortunately, to do it. So, yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for your presence. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you missed anything about this class, it's going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 Central p.m. Thumbs up. Share if you want. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And be good. Bye, everyone.